Village School by Miss Reed, whose real name was Dora Jessie Saint. This is a book on the top 1,000 list by James Mustick, 1,000 Books to Read Before You Die. I put it on my 26 books to read in 2026. Initially in my video, I kind of projected this book as a sort of mid or higher tier anticipated read because it's basically a children's series, I think, sort of, maybe. Now I'm not so sure about that anymore. But usually for books for children, I'm a little bit more lenient towards the rating and reviews because it's not principally a book for me, it's a book for children. But still, something about the book I was reluctant about. Maybe it's the author name, Miss Reed, just an obvious pseudonym or whatever. And this is kind of going to be a theme for this video, is that it's a real petty reason to not like or be interested in the book. Just, oh, well, I don't really like that name, Miss Reed, so I'm reluctant about the series. That's a real petty reason to not be interested in a book. But at the same time, I mean, these issues do matter. I mean, it is simply what we believe. So anyway, I started reading it, and pretty much from the very first, I wasn't liking it. And I mean, like the first sentence or whatever, the first paragraph, I was like, I read more, I read a page, I read another page, and I was still like, I don't like this. And by page 10, I was just like, this is torture reading this. I don't want to keep reading. Basically, the problem with this book is it describes everything about everything, and it moves from one thing to another. So it'll describe the little village hamlet, like how many buildings are in this little village, how the climate is in this area, how the roof is on this first building, who lives in this first building. It'll give an anecdote about that family. And then it'll talk about who lives next door, what their roof is like, what the exterior of their building is like, who lives in that building. Then it'll move to another building. Then it goes to the school and it describes the exterior of the school. Then it'll talk about the roof of the school. Then it'll talk about what happens when it rains and how there's like water leaking through the roof. And then it'll talk about each room in the school. And it'll say who teaches class or whatever in that room. And then it'll finally talk about the main classroom because, village school or whatever. So it's about, this book is about one, classroom teacher or whatever. So it describes her class, and then it describes like her desk or whatever, just describes the room in general. Then it'll talk about like the recess yard, and it'll describe that. And then it describes the games the kids play at recess. And then it describes a tree out in the recess yard. So it's just one thing after another, describing the one thing, describing another, describing another, describing another, describing another. And it just keeps going from one thing to another. So I just don't like that. I've talked in my channel how I don't really like a lot of description in novels, and this is kind of an example of why. It's just describing a bunch of stuff I do not care about. So just from page 10, I was like, I do not want to read this book. I don't care. Like, usually I try to give a book around 75 pages or so to at least give the book a fair shot. But for this one, I was just like, I don't want to read this. I know I'm not going to like it. I can see what it's doing. It's going to do that for the whole book. It's going to do that for the whole series. I'm just not interested. So I don't think readers need to give every single book like a certain page limit, like, oh, at least try 50 pages or 75 pages or whatever. If you just know right off the bat a book is not working for you, you don't have to torture yourself reading 50 or 75 pages just to say you read 75 pages. I read 10 pages and I knew I'm not liking this, I'm not going to like it, so instead of torturing myself, I just DNF it and move on. So I'm not going to rate it because I did not read the book that far into it. And honestly, I didn't see anything that made me think this is a 1-star book. It's just a book that's not for me. If you want a book that obsesses about like day-to-day life in a really small town and just the thatched roofs of each building and how it looks when it rains and every single little day-to-day random task, if you're interested in that, you might like this series very much. Otherwise, it's not for me, and it may not be for you either.
2, 3, 4.